so much that sometimes we're a poor reflection. Not all of us. There's many people that are on the right path. But if we look at the lives of Muslims throughout the world, you'll find that many of them have moved far away. Many Muslims in the world, when they look at Islam and had to look into Islam properly, if someone was to come and teach them properly, they would think you're talking about a foreign religion. They wouldn't even be able to identify the deen of Islam. And so many Muslims are so distant from the teachings of the Quran and the Sunnah that they look like something totally unlike the Islam they know. And this is what we are trying to do in the series. Help you to give the proper message of Islam to the people you're calling. But you need to give the message to yourself first, on a daily basis, not also once in a lifetime activity. It has to be done often. When we look at Islam, sometimes it looks like there are two different poles. We're like bipolar. Most Muslims suffer from bipolar disorder. One side of us, what we should do, and the other side is what we shouldn't do. And we have up and down mood swings. One day we feel like, yes, I'm a super Muslim. And then next week, we're down in the dumps again. And everyone's going, are you a Muslim? Because we suffer from Muslim bipolar disorder. And there's no medication for it. And definitely not the gospel. Some people will say, oh, you need to become a Christian and take the gospel. That pill will help you. That pill will not help you. So we need to reform ourselves and change ourselves and see what needs to be changed. And how do we reform ourselves? By submitting to Allah. We cannot do it on our own. We will fail. We cannot do it without somebody correcting us, because then we'll only correct the things that suit us and are easy. We need somebody to help us. This is why we should make sure that we always have friends that are smarter and cleverer and better than we are. It's no use me having friends that are equal to me in intelligence, knowledge, or less intelligence and knowledge. I want to be around people with more intelligence and more knowledge and more closer to Allah, so that I have a goal to reach. If you aim low, you'll reach low. If you aim high, you'll reach high. So you've got to set your goals higher. And with these people, they will be, if they are true Muslims, and they are good Muslims, they'll correct you in a gentle way. And they will help you to grow. And will they make mistakes? Of course they will make mistakes. But it's better than hanging around people that are going to bring you down. I often explain, if I stood on the table and I try to pull you up, which is easier, for me to pull you up or you to pull me down? Much easier for you to pull me down than me to pull you up, unless I'm like really pumped up. But even then I wouldn't be able to do it. Even a weak man will be able to pull a strong man off a table. So it's always better to have people that are better than you, that you can set your goals higher. So Muslims almost everywhere in the world need attention. We need to change, no matter how good we think we are. And many of the countries in the world, we find that Muslims have repackaged their own version of Islam. It's the revised standard version of Islam, the amplified version of Islam, the non-inspired version of Islam. Now the Christians have the New International Version. We have the non-inspired version, one that we just come up with as we go along, and we think it'll be acceptable. So we have to make sure that we haven't got the non-inspired version or the new revised standard version of Islam, that we've got the original old school version, the one that worked, the one that hasn't failed those people who remained faithful to the original message. We read last week that wonderful, wonderful ayah in the Quran, in chapter 2 of the Quran, and it translates in verse 208. In English it says, "O you believe, come all of you in your whole life or wholeheartedly into submission to Allah, and follow not the footsteps of the devil, because lo, he is an open enemy to you." So we have to come our whole life. Remember, some people have made sure that Allah is only limited to the mosque, and everything else is mine, belongs to me. No, this verse says whole life, wholeheartedly, every part of you. And so many of us have become partial acceptors of Islam. And so maybe we've restricted Allah to Salah, or perhaps we've restricted Him to fasting, or we restricted it to Ramadan, to fasting during the period of Ramadan, or some other religious traditions that you might hold on to. But you've lost Allah in the rest of your life. It's almost like you put Him on one side, if that was possible to do. Often people say it feels like Allah is no longer close to me. It's not that He's no longer close to you, it's you moved. Allah has always been, He's constant, He remains the same. He doesn't chop and change and move, and we're the one that moves. We're the one that stops doing things. If you want to find out why things are going on in your life, I can guarantee there was a combination of events that took place. The first thing that you stopped doing was performing your salah on time. That was the first thing. Second, you stopped reading the Quran. Third, you stopped worrying about fasting during the year, not just in Ramadan. Fourth, you start compromising on your eating habits and food habits. Oh, well, I can't find a halal place, let me just eat anyway. So you'll find a slow erosion took place. It didn't happen all at once, it didn't like that all happen. It was a slow process. So if you want to start it all up again, same thing. Go back, perform your salah, first and foremost. Start getting into regular prayer time. Then get back into those habits again, you'll find it very easy. The first thing the shaitan will attack in your life is prayer and reading, learning, reciting. That's what he will attack first. So we need to make sure that we put Islam back in every area of our lives. Economics, politics, even our diets. Sometimes we Muslims are famous at overeating. We need to control ourselves. This is our body that's got to be used. And we've got to look after it. We have to make sure that Allah's authority is in every avenue of our lives. We have to look and see what we're keeping for ourselves. 99% is not 100%. You need to give 100%. Submission means submission. You can't be a slave and free at the same time. You're either a slave or you're free. If you're free, you can't call yourself a slave. So even if you say, well, it's only 1% that I'm holding back for myself, you're still holding back and you cannot claim to be a submitter. Then you are something else. So you have to give everything over. You have to trust totally in Allah. So Allah's authority in many, many people's lives, even sometimes in our own lives, we've limited it. And so we don't give ourselves over to Allah. The Jews, if we look in history, in the past, were condemned because they only partially accepted the deen. They held much of it to themselves. And today, we in the same way are standing on the same category as them. We are only giving partial. We're only giving lip service, as the Christians like to say. I like that word. It says we give lip service. We just talk about it, but we don't actually practice on it. And just as the Jews were disgraced in the history, if we look back at the events that took place in history, how they were disgraced, how they went into slavery and freed and enslaved and freed, because they didn't listen. When the commands were given to them on how to obey Allah, what did they do the same day? They made a calf, a golden calf, and started to worship. So we have to be very, very cautious that we are not going to be guilty of the same things. So if we claim to be believers and we claim to follow Allah, we need to make sure that we are continuously submitting to Allah, that we are continuously trying to change. And there's a great tragedy in our lives when people start to ignore, and it doesn't even harm them, it doesn't even hurt them anymore, and they don't even get affected by it. Then we know that we have become hardened and that we need to break ourselves down. We need to maybe go sit somewhere on a mountain or something and reevaluate everything. See how everything lies in our lives. Not that you're going to go sit on the mountain and sit in a lotus position and be a guru. Go to the top of a mountain and see how your life lies. And see how you got to that point where you have no more emotion and feelings about the state that you're in. Let's take a break. When we get back from the break, we'll continue, inshallah.
A Hafiz par excellence of the Quran, a dynamic Da'i of Islam, a student with brilliant academic achievements.
قل يا أهل الكتاب تعالوا إلى كلمة سواء بيننا وبينكم.
This very student, Umair Qadri of Islamic International School, Mumbai, scored 93% marks, securing an A-star, the highest grade achievable at the Cambridge International Examination 2015 UK, while simultaneously standing first in the world in the Islamic Studies A-level exam. May Allah fulfill his dream to become an effective Da'i of Islam and help him spread the message of peace worldwide. Islamic International School and Junior College, Mumbai. Education for both the worlds.
This world has never seen and will never see anyone like the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah chose the best of characteristics for him. In his intellect and manner, his beauty and his appearance, he was the best in everything. I am Muhammad Simhamud. Join me to learn more about his beautiful description and his incomparable character in Know Your Prophet.
Get an in-depth description of the most popular and incomparable character in the world in Know Your Prophet, peace be upon him, next on Peace TV. Stories of glories. Often that three. Fought the pangs of poverty by selling gowns at 13. His blindness did not stop his unquenchable thirst for knowledge. Propagated virtues, prevented vice with decisions unchallenged. He is Sheikh Abdul Aziz bin Abdullah bin Baz, former Grand Mufti of Saudi.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah save us from the wrath of turning away from Him, following our own understandings. We are told to be different in Islam. Different from the Jew. Different from the people of the book. Different from the pagans. Different from the society that we live in. But we know in the Quran three things. We're supposed to be different from the Jews, different from the people of the book, different from the pagans. We're called to be different. Yet, often when we look at ourselves, we look no different. We look the same as. And so the Prophet ﷺ often said that we should not resemble the people. We should stand out from them. We shouldn't look like them. This means we should grow this little thing called a beard, so we don't look like everybody else. That we look after this thing on the top of our lips, this moustache, that it doesn't grow big and twirly like you see some people waxing them and putting them. That we follow that. That we look after our hair. That we are aware of the colors that we wear. That would be pleasing to Allah, or what the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ told us we must wear. So when we start looking at these things and not resembling the people, then we will start to change. Some people will say, well, didn't you just say last week that those are minor things? Yes, but if you cannot be trusted with minor things, how can you be trusted with big things? So it starts with the small things. Start changing the small things, because you're a Muslim already. And you're claiming to be a Muslim. So do the easy things first, as well as doing the internal things. So the easy things are to do things on the outside of the body. The tough things are the internal things that have to change on the inside. So you can do them simultaneously. Sometimes people want to do just the one or just the other. There are some people in the world today, there are different groups that go around. They go knock on Muslims' doors. They go knock on their door and say, brother, you need to stop going to clubs. You need to stop going to discotheques. You need to stop dancing. You need to stop flirting with girls. You must come to mosque. And they're dealing with people in a good way because they're doing externally. And then there's other people that come behind them and they say to them, oh no, don't worry about the fact that you're going to clubs. Don't worry about the fact that you're going to meeting with girls and all the rest of it. You must change what's inside of you. Don't worry about the external, just concentrate on the internal. And it almost sounds like these two groups are clashing with each other. One is missing the half of the story. And the other one is missing the other half of the story. You don't have to do them in separation to each other. You do them in conjunction with each other. So when you go knocking on the door and you belong to one of these groups, and you go calling people to come back to Islam, Tell them about how to change their heart, as well as how to change their outside. But don't give them mixed messages and saying, well, don't worry, you can do that as long as you accept or heed. No, it's a combination effort. Let's work together. So don't work against each other, work with each other. And it's sad when I hear stories like this happening, where we have people doing this. So yes, there is internal things that are far more important, but there's no reason why you can't fix the external at the same time. Today we see that many people, when we look at them, resemble the same as the communities they come from. Like we spoke about last time, Christmas, Muslims celebrating Christmas and Easter and saying Happy New Year and Happy all this other nonsense to the non-Muslim. No wonder they don't respect you. You must be different. And so that we must not outwardly resemble the people or inwardly resemble the people. We must be different. They should be looking at us and saying, I want to be more like you, not the other way around. If we look at history, we find that people like to follow leaders. Stalin, Hitler, all these other people. People want to follow a leader, whether the leader is right or wrong. So people are easily influenced. So we could influence people for the better. Not in a negative way like this, but in a positive way. Not saying that we are like Stalin or Hitler, but just saying it took one person to influence a whole society for the bad. Imagine if we could use one person to influence society for the better, that they would want to be like us. Look what they did. They wanted to dress like Hitler. They wanted to speak like Hitler. They wanted to walk like Hitler, because he influenced the people. If we could be like that, people look at us and they want to be like us, that would be a different story altogether. In America, there was a law called the Jim Crow law. Jim Crow was a law that was passed in the 50s, 40s, 50s, where racism was practiced openly, and they could separate people because of races. Very similar to what we had in South Africa with the apartheid law. And Jim Crow's law says that at that time you could separate people because of race. They were not equal to white people, blah, 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 the whole story, normal racism. And many people think that now in the 21st century that racism is gone, apartheid's gone, Jim Crow law is gone. Yet we still find in many places in the world, and even in America, where we still find racism in existence. Why am I bringing this up? Because the prison system in America is so racist, but it's the truth. It's as if Jim Crow's law is still in effect. You will find that in white neighborhoods, that the police hardly ever go and check the schools, universities, colleges for drugs. But yet in black neighborhoods, they're constantly doing it. When a white man goes to jail, he gets all these privileges when he comes out. When a black man goes to jail, he can lose everything. He doesn't get food stamps. He doesn't get welfare grants. He doesn't get anything. So when he comes out, what must he do? He goes back into crime because he can't get anything. He can't get a house. He can't get a job. He can't get welfare. So he goes back. We as Muslims, what are we doing about this? Why are we not doing something and speaking out against this? Why is it that in the 21st century, this can still be happening? You know, I am shocked when I look at the statistics, the American statistics to the prisons, that they're keeping people to make sure they do the work inside a prison, who's getting below minimum wage, who has been forced into that situation, just like slaves did. So we have to look at Muslims, and we have to, at our Muslim self, and say, what are we doing about this situation? Maybe you see some people say, well, there's not enough Muslims in America. What are you doing for those brothers? What are you doing for those sisters that are in jail in America? If you're a Muslim in America, what are you doing to help them? What systems are you putting in place? There is a husband and wife team in America. 2 people, Muslims, fantastic people, that I met and I have spoken with, that are actually doing something. 2. Talking about millions of people that are in jail. These 2 have got a magazine called Prison World magazine, that they're dealing with how to help the brothers and sisters that are incarcerated in America. So when they come out, that they don't go through that. It's like you come out the one door and you go back in the next one. What are we doing as Muslims to make sure that we are an example to change society? We're not even talking about the political system. We're not interested in the American political system. Not even commenting on it. Commenting about a social issue, a reality And if you want to read more about this, and you maybe at home you want to find out more about Jim Crow's law, I encourage you to Google it. Jim, J-I-M-C-R-O-W, Jim Crow's law. And you will see what has actually been going on in the world and how much work we still have to do. There's a book called Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness. Very, very good book to read. Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness, where it deals with this specific issue. Where it was an African-American woman who, when somebody like me said, why are there so many African-Americans in America going to jail? She thought this guy must be mad. Until she went and researched it herself. As an African-American woman, she realized, look, this is true. Now, I'm a South African. What do I know about American politics? So if we know in South Africa, and the rest of the world are figuring it out, imagine how they must be suffering in the States. So we really ask people to get involved in the prisons to help with those people who are incarcerated so that this situation doesn't continue. And even if you're not an American citizen, even if you do not live in America, you can still support those that are in America. America is the fastest growing Muslim population. It's growing all the time. But we are needing to be practical. We need to be real, down to earth with our dawah. And we must set ourselves apart. And we must give hope to the communities. These people do not want to be incarcerated. Do you understand that? Don't believe the hype that these people, oh, they deserve to be in jail. They don't deserve to be in jail. No one deserves. This is why the Sharia is so beautiful. If only the world would adopt the Sharia, we wouldn't have these type of institutions where we'd have this type of situation that we're seeing in America. And there are other countries that are just as guilty, by the way. But this is the one that I know more about from books that I've read. So do your research, figure out how you can be different as a Muslim. So that's my encouragement today, on how to be different. That we need to be the role models of society. That people look at us and say, I have to be like you. You're making real practical differences in society. You're looking at those people who are incarcerated. I work as a chaplain in South Africa, and I work mostly in the hospitals. I don't work in the prison system at all. I used to, but it became so depressing I couldn't take it anymore. And I had to move out because I just couldn't take it anymore. So I know exactly what it's like. We have a prison board in South Africa that deals with that. Other brothers that now deal with it. So you need the support structures. So brothers and sisters, community at home, get involved with being practical in your dawah. Be real and let people see that Islam is what they need in their life. Well, that's all the time we have for this week. So make sure you join us again, same place, same time. So for me, Areeb Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
مشفق متعطف لا ينتهي بالحصر ما أعطاه رب رحيم مشفق متعطف.
Let's come under the shade of the scholars.
So the issue is a problem of knowledge.
Asim Al-Hakim.
Why do people do bid'ah?
Imam Malik said, whoever claims there is a good innovation in the deen,
Salim Al-Amri.
he is accusing that Prophet Muhammad did not convey the message.
Dr. Mamdouh Muhammad.
If you know that the Prophet ﷺ did something and I do something else, you have to follow the Prophet ﷺ. Don't follow me.
Abdul Rahim McCarthy.
But if each one believes his goal is to please Allah, to follow the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Abdul Rahim Green.
I think this really is to do with your internal state.
Where does the Quran and Sunnah point to?
Muhammad Al-Sharif.
They have to follow what Allah and His Messenger said.
Let's imbibe from these scholars the fruitful solutions for the problems of the world.
Which one we would take and which one we would leave?
Question to every Muslim.
In the shade of the scholars. every Wednesday and Saturday at 11:30 p.m. and repeat telecast at 12:30 p.m. UK on Peace TV.
This is Asim Luqman Al-Hakim, and you're watching Peace TV, the solution for humanity.
Today class is the touchstone of theology. Theology means the study of God. Today class is the litmus test for the study of God. It is the 112th chapter of the Quran, verse number 1 to 4. Qul huwa Allahu ahad. Says Allah, one and only. Allahu samad. Allah, the absolute, the eternal. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. He begets not, nor is he begotten. Walam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. There is nothing like unto him. It's mentioned in Sahih al-Bukhari, volume 6, book of virtues of the Quran.